Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Ats Tsauratus Salamah, student from English Education Department UIN Jakarta. Now I'm gonna tell the story of the novel that I've read. The title is Penance by Kanae Minato. Actually, this is a novel that's translated from Japanese original version. Alright, let's begin to the story. This novel tells about 5 little girls from the same elementary school and neighborhood. They are Emily, Sae, Maki, Akiko, and Yuka. These 5 girls were playing on the school basketball field and an old man approached them and claiming as a repairman for the ventilation in both changing room in the school. And he asked for help to get what he had left behind in the changing room, with the lure will give them ice creams. Then the man chose Emily to bring, but after a long time they didn't come back. The 4 friends then looked for Emily in the changing room, but what they found was Emily who has died. Emily's condition when they found it was very pathetic, where Emily was leaning against the bathroom door with her eyes open and mouth was oozing liquid, and Emily's clothes and scarf were already open and there was blood from her face. The 4 children screamed in surprise and didn't believe what they saw. Then Maki swiftly instructed Akiko to run fastly to Emily's house and tell Emily's parents. Yuka instructed to call the police, Sai instructed to guard Emily's corpse, and Maki would find any teachers who were still at school. Asako, she is Emily's mother, who got the news from Akiko. At first she didn't believe it and thought it was a prank that Emily did with her friends, but when she arrived at school and found Emily's body laying miserably in the bathroom, she screamed in disbelief, "Why should Emily?" Then the 4 children were picked up by their parents, and each parent said that they were grateful that it was not their children. Asako still didn't accept the death of her child, demanded the 4 children who were witnesses to explain the characteristics of Emily's murderer. But the 4 children always said they didn't remember the face of the killer, and also their parents always said that what Asako did could disrupt the children who could be traumatized from the incident. Things that make Asako sad because no one helped her and sympathized with Emily's death. Even in the public, the news spread about Emily's death is that it is the result of girls playing alone with strangers. It makes Asako put the 4 children under the pressure that they must succeed in finding Emily's killer, and Emily's case should be resolved, or Asako will never feel the pain that Emily feels. The pressure that Asako exerted was deeply rooted in each of the children until they grew into adults. Sae, one of the witnesses of Emily's death, she thought that at the time the man chose Emily to bring because Emily's body was the most fertile and looked attractive compared to others. So what is embedded inside our subconsciousness is, if she gets menstruation or thrives like Emily, the murderer will kill her too. This made her grow up to be a woman who had never experienced menstruation. Plus the fear that haunted her if Asako, the mother of Emily, could avenge Emily's death on her. Sae grew up with the Penance. As an adult, Sae worked in a company and she met Takahiro. Takahiro is Emily's cousin. Takahiro admits that he has liked Sae since childhood and he was reunited and adopted. At the time, Takahiro understood the trauma that Sae had and would take her to live abroad, so that Sae felt far from the threat of the murderer. But it turns out that after their wedding day, Sae found out that Takahiro is a fetishist to the French doll. Takahiro is obsessed with Sae's French doll, which for Takahiro, Sae is very similar to the doll. The French doll is the traditional Japanese doll, which is very rare for people to have. Takahiro married Sae because he was actually very obsessed with French doll and made Sae resemble to the doll all the time. Oftentimes, Takahiro was temperamental towards Sae by slapping her cheeks many times, but after this, Sae will be dressed back into French doll. Until one day, where Sae was slapped by Takahiro until fell to the floor and was unconscious, Sae felt a warm liquid flowing from her crotch, and she unconsciously killed Takahiro. But what Sae felt after he killed Takahiro was she didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, she felt free from the threat of Emily's murder that she turned herself into a police station. Then Maki, who actually remembered the murder face, but Maki was afraid to say it. As an adult, Maki became an elementary school teacher. At a school event, there was a man who disturbed one of her students near the swimming pool. In Maki's mind, there was the replay of the memory of Emily's death. Then Maki pushed the man into the swimming pool, and when the man was about to pull over, Maki kicked the man's head to the bottom of the pool, and the man died on the spot. This incident made Maki to murder, but then she could clearly remember that Emily's killer was the one she had met. It is Hiroki Nanjo. Then Maki sent a letter to Asako and informed her that she couldn't say Emily's murder at first because the faces of the murderer and Emily are very similar. Asako, knowing that her nephew Takahiro was killed by Sai, and the news that Maki is become killer at her school makes Asako thinks, what is the problem with their lives that made them like that? Asako gets enraged and connects the two ironic words that maybe it could be her fault seeing them as eyewitnesses to her daughter's death. Because after all, Asako still wants the four children to live a normal life because she doesn't want to be someone who's a burden on someone else's life. Although in fact, what she had done so far has become a burden and pressure on the mental health of the four children. Next, what happened to Akiko was that she killed his own brother who tried to rape his stepdaughter, and what happened to Yuka was that she was pregnant with her brother-in-law, but his brother-in-law didn't want people to know that the child was his son because he wanted to keep his wife's feelings. It's Yuka's sister, her name is Ayu. Then Yuka's brother-in-law wanted to kill the child that Yuka was carrying, but Yuka tried to defend herself by pushing her brother-in-law from the ladder until he fell to the bottom of the stairs. Then Asako received a letter from Maki about Emily's killer, which is Hiroki Nanjo. There Asako realized that she has been mistaken to the four children because she treated them like Emily's murderer because they couldn't reveal the real murderer. And she also blamed the environment and society in public who are not sympathetic to her daughter's tragic death. And all the assumptions she had for 15 years were wrong, because if it was Hiroki Nanjo who killed Emily, then she also killed Emily. Let's flashback to the time of the story first. So Hiroki Nanjo is Asako's boyfriend when Asako was still 20 years old. In the past, when Asako was young, she met Hiroki through Akie. Akie is Asako's best friend. Asako is in a relationship with Hiroki until finally they will marry. But when Akie knew about it, she committed suicide because in fact, Akie had an affair with Hiroki. And when Hiroki found out that Akie is dead, he never returned to Asako to marry her because actually Hiroki loved Akie and Asako. But at the time Asako was pregnant with Hiroki's child, but Hiroki didn't know it. Then Asako met Adachi, a nice guy who is willing to marry her and take care of Asako's child like his own child. Then after Emily starts to grow up, Hiroki avenged Akie by taking Asako's happiness. Hiroki was about raping Emily and then killing her tragically without knowing that Emily is his biological child. Well, what Asako did after finding out that Emily's murderer was Hiroki Nanjo, she told Hiroki the truth that he is Emily's father, and this is the end of the story. It is not explained how Asako treats Hiroki because Asako mentioned it was published on TV and in newspaper. I think the author wants the reader to imagine with our own thoughts because from the beginning the author has carried the reader into the Penance storyline where the pain that is focused on in this story is psychological pain by each character involved. Very well, that's all the story from this interesting Penance novel. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this story. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye.